how you became involved in doing some research and doing the writing of your book, Last Train to Cooperstown.
Yeah, well, like I told you, Phil, I've been a lifetime baseball fan. Uh, Grew up in Kansas City during the um, golden era of baseball, the 1950s. We grew up idolizing guys like Willie Mays and Ernie Banks and Henry Aaron. And as I got older, I learned that they were all products of Negro League baseball,
Mm-hmm.
and that started me to do some research, and I did some things to learn. Read some books about Josh Gibson, Buck Leonard, and of course Satchel Paige. And then 2006, they had that group of 17 that from Negro League Baseball that was inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I saw some of the names, and I realized I didn't know much about them. Guys like Frank Grant and Cristobal Torrente, um, Pete Hill. So I did some research, and I came up with a book about the profile of those 17. There were 12 players and five executives.
Mm-hmm.
One, of course, being Effa Manley, who was
Yes.
a part owner of the Newark Eagles and is the only woman that's inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. So that was my premise of putting the book together. It's called The Last Train to Cooperstown, and I visualized how it would be if all of those people were still alive and that they had a Hall of Fame celebration like they do when they induct people now. And I thought about if all those people and their followers came to Cooperstown, it would be on this big train, and that's why I called it the last train to Cooperstown.
Awesome. And that's a good point, right? And I've talked about this with other people as well. It's unfortunate what happened and why it happened, and you can't go back. But it's really, really important, like you and so many others, do all the time, is researching more, telling the stories, finding out more, getting those out there to people who are not aware of it. Because, I've been a baseball fan my whole life. Grew up. I'm from Pennsylvania originally. Grew up. I'm still a Pennsylvania sports fan, even though I'm down here in Texas now. And
Okay?
I grew up loving baseball, playing it as a little league. Playing it into high school, playing a little bit in college, and then um, began working in minor league baseball, and that was when I got to meet many of the Negro League players who were still alive back in the late '80s, early '90s, when Reggie Jackson did a benefit night for these players. Because at the time they weren't part of the Major League Baseball pension fund or any of that kind of stuff, and it just fascinated me, and I just didn't realize, as much as I thought I knew about baseball, here was a whole slice of baseball history that I just had to find out more about, and I've been kind of hooked ever since. It's been, 20, 30 years of digging and writing. And like I mentioned to you, I've written a screenplay and some other things, and I just, this is like I said, the internet was intended, I think, to be informational and learning things, and it's turned into a lot of nonsense in a lot in a lot of places. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to take just a little piece of it and try to get it back to where it should be. So another thing too, right? So 1920, the Negro National League comes along. Um, how similar it is with today's environment. I mean, you had the similar social. Of
Right.
course, we weren't coming out of a world war, thank
No.
goodness.
Right.
But
But the racial climate was very toxic back
yes.
back in 1920, and I don't know if people realize, but the start of the Negro National League, Rube Foster, who put it together, that was done here in Kansas City, Missouri, at the YMCA building on
Mm-hmm.
18th and Paseo, which
Mm-hmm.
is right down the street from where the Negro League National Museum is
Mm-hmm.
right now. But it was a very transitional time in the country. We were just coming off of World War I, and it was also a transitional time for baseball, for Major League Baseball, because they had just come off of the Black Sox scandal, where
Right.
the Chicago White Sox threw the World Series in 1919, and 1920 was also the year that Major League Baseball elected Kennesaw Mountain Landis as the first commissioner of baseball. And for the next 2 decades, a little more, he participated with the owners of maintaining the invisible color line that
Hmm.
kept African American and dark skinned Latinos out of Major League Baseball. And 1920 was also the beginning of the change in baseball from the dead ball era,
Hmm.
where Babe Ruth came into prominence in 1920, and that's when the long ball, the home run, started playing a big part of the game. So it was very instrumental, I think, uh, at that particular time that the Negro National League was formed.
Right, and that's another great point too, right? The in 1994 there was the strike here, and a lot of people
Right, right,
soured
right.
on players and money and this and everything was so involved, right? And then what happened to get that kind of out of it was 1998 and Sammy Sosa and Mark McGuire and the
Mark
home run,
McGuire. Right,
and it
right.
just revitalized the game again. And it is kind of funny. I mean, I'm a big history guy. How often history tends to repeat itself again,
Sure,
because that point you made about Babe Ruth, right? I mean, he came along and revolutionized the game. He was trying to hit home runs for one, uh, but he also, you had manufacturing methods were different, and they outlawed the
sure.
spitball and all sorts of other things that changed the game, and it really got it back, um, you know, back into its heyday again. Because like, yeah, that
Right.
the Black Sox scandal, that was a big a big scandal that impacted the sport in 1919. So I'm going to put up. I really would love to know more about that process of, if you um, can tell us about that 2006 class, and how many players how many players started the funnel before they finally boiled it down to the 17 that got into the Hall of Fame in 2006.
Well, to, to start, I think just the fact that it was finally realized that the Negro League Baseball was not represented in the Hall of Fame.
No, right? There was
Um,
what, 18 of them in
right,
there before that?
right,
Yeah, it's crazy.
right. At that time, there had been, like the Buck Leonards and the Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson, and others, Judy Johnson, some others, but still, it was not representative. And so, Major League Baseball gave a grant to the Hall of Fame, and the Hall of Fame pulled together the historians, the Negro League historians at this time. We talked about the author of Only the Ball Was Black, Only the Ball Was White,
Hmm.
black rather,
Robert
and he
Peterson, yeah.
Robert Peterson. He was still alive
Hmm.
at this time, and there were some others like Larry Lester, and they did research, and they came with a group of Negro League players that they were wanted to recommend for the Hall of Fame. And they went through the sorting process, and they came out with about 50. And then they went through one more vote, and that's where the 17 came into existence.
and,
Now,
and that was a special committee, right? That
yes,
they formed, like you said, because
right.
prior to that, wasn't there an agreement? A procedure that there was actually a Negro League selection process every year, right? And didn't they do that
That
for
was
a while? Like Ray
that was
Dandridge got in that way,
right,
several other
right,
players.
right, right.
Why did
That
that stop? What
that
happened there?
they stopped that, and then they gave it to the Veterans Committee.
Okay.
Okay, and then with the Veterans Committee, there was some that came through, but not Rube Foster. I came through the Veterans Committee. Guys like Turkey Stearns, he was elected through the Veterans Committee, but there was some were being elected, but it still was not a true
No,
representation
no.
of what Negro League baseball or was about. And that generated the result of this, of the grant given and the committee put together for further research that was done.
Yeah, think about that, right? I mean, 200 and some members of the Hall of Fame, and there was 16 that were 18, whatever it was,
Right.
that were from the Negro Leagues. And when you think about it, that number should have been, would have been, had they been playing,
Oh, sure.
considerably higher. And
Right, right, right. And but really, people should realize that the Hall of Fame itself was really not. It was started, but it was started on a myth that baseball was invented by Abner Doubleday
right,
out of Cooperstown, New York, where he was
right,
from, and that was not the truth.
no,
That was not the truth.
yeah,
But anyway, yeah. But anyway, they got down to the 50, and then they inducted the 17. There was some that were left out. Of course, you and I talked about Buck O'Neill,
mm-hmm,
and guys like John
unfortunate,
Donaldson. Yeah,
yes,
Rap Dixon. There's a move right now to try
yes,
for Rap Dixon to get in, and then also Minnie Minoso,
mm-hmm,
who a lot of people feel based on what he did, not just what he did in the Negro Leagues, but also in the major leagues, because he was really the first Hispanic star in Major League Baseball. So and then that there were others, but um, that were left out. But got down to the 17, as I said, 12 players and five owners or managers in Negro Leagues, and they were inducted in 2006.